Kuvempu is a writer who said, in an epigraph to his very famous classic, he said, no one is important, no one is unimportant, nothing is insignificant. So he kind of believed in this kind of an overall, the Sarvodaya notion. And he was, resistance was his mode actually. And I find that in your writing as well, there is that sense of resistance to all that's happening around and a certain kind of an idealism to lift, to transcend that. So just as Kuvempu was able to transcend the bounds of his other identities, which you quoted, in your speech. So I'd like to hear you respond to this particular, conjunction of Kuvempu and your writing, ma'am.
Thank you, Anmala. I belong to that family and I have imbibed all the values of Gandhian era because my grandfather was a genuine Gandhi and he believed in Gandhian ideology so much that we had spinning wheel in our family. All of us used to wear khadi as students. And so right from the beginning, I developed the idea of social concern, looking at the underprivileged people. And so that idea developed during my student life, in college, school, and later on in my writing. At the beginning, I focused on personal anguish. But the moment I came across the social anguish, the conflict, the injustice, the exploitation, I was deeply disturbed. And that actually forced me to enter into those dark corners of our society where people are fighting for justice and many of them are voiceless. This voicelessness does not belong to a particular period. Even today, people are voiceless. And many of us, we know why they are voiceless, what prevents them from fighting against injustice. I learned from many languages, that is the language of resistance, the language of courage. And to me, Kannada is the language of resistance, it is the language of courage, it is the language of fearlessness. And that's why I admired the region, the place, and even the writers, because we Gujaratis are fortunate. We get translated versions of so many classics, the best of Kannada literature we can get in English and also in Gujarati. So this is how I am here.
Yeah. Thank you for that response. Actually, many writers, when faced with this kind of a situation around us, where you find that, people are up against a lot of injustice and so on, have rued the possibility about literature makes nothing happen. Poetry makes nothing happen. There's a sense of frustration with the writing not being potent enough to fight the injustice of the system. What is your own take on this, and what has inspired your social activism in addition to some literary activism as well?
When there is darkness, we have to write about darkness. Because in history, one may ask that when your time was full of strife and struggle and lack of freedom and anguish, and injustice and exploitation and sycophancy. Why were you silent? History will ask this question if we are silent. So, silence is not the answer. We have to build and preserve the courage to resist, the courage to voice whenever we find anything wrong. We have to speak against it. Otherwise, one may say that we have failed in our dharma. Dharma, the writer's dharma, not duty. I would call it dharma. So it is the dharma of a writer. And I would say, swadharme nidhanam shreya, come what may. But preserving, keeping this dharma is the necessity, the call of the day, the call of the time, and we cannot remain silent.
You have consistently raised your voice against communal hostilities, political intrigues, the rigid and insensitive bureaucratic system which pushes common people to endless despair. Yet you have also said, our people are capable of performing miracles. The next generation may perform one, who knows? They could create a nation where the mind is without fear and the head is held high.
Yes, yes.
And by that you have saying that you have struck a very positive, optimistic note. So I was wondering, where does the source of our resilience and our courage that you just spoke, where does it lie, you think?
The source of our resilience is in our forerunners, the masters, like the poet Kuvempu. Discard everything that is worthless. Push on. The courage, the strength that you need as a writer, you have to develop that, you have to build that. And the only answer to that is learn to say no. Learn to say no to so many things. Learn to say no to power. Learn to say no to all caste and creed that are not necessary, that are worthless, that are dehumanizing the society. Learn to say no to all this false religiosity, the demonstrative religiosity, because the real religion teaches us to have a humanized society. And unfortunately, we are rushing towards a very dehumanized society where there is lot of cruelty, hatred, and total lack of understanding. We are intolerant. Now, that is not the identity of our society. That is not the identity of our culture.
I was wondering if, as a woman and a writer and an activist, what is it that our culture has to learn from women? Is there anything special that we women have to contribute at this juncture in history?
First of all, we have to trust ourselves. Women have to trust because they are powerful. Learn to recognize the power that you have. There is a lot of tenacity. They are mothers. Women are born mothers. So they have patience, they have love, they have understanding, they have a lot of other values that are lacking in our society. So, because they nurture life. Women, they are the nurturers of life. They bring life to this earth. So, no woman, all women, though I am not a mother, I know that all women are born mother, they nurture life. And those who can nurture life are never weak, they are the strongest.
Yes, very well spoken from the recipient of the Thirumalamba Award, affirming women in such positive terms. And that's really very, very nice. And one last question. Do you see any tension between balancing your activist self and your writer self? Or do they go together? How does it work out?
Yes, because writing is not a propaganda. I do not stand for any ism. It should be free, totally free. So that freedom, the freedom of a writer, has to be there. The first thing, that is the first condition. And if you are playing a game, you must obey the rules of the game. So if you are writing, then you have to respect the written word. And the written word is not propaganda. It is something very subtle. And that subtlety has to be in whatever you write, be it a novel or a story or an essay. So the indirectness, the subtlety, the power of language, this is what you have to learn and preserve. And this power can be preserved. The strength of your voice has to be preserved, and that can be preserved only when you are not under any pressure, either political, religious, social, any pressure. Total freedom. That total freedom should be your ideal. Follow that ideal, and you can balance both writing and activism.
Would you please read a short excerpt for us? We were talking about the power of language, just as a sampling, just for the taste.
But in Gujarati, I don't have anything.
No, maybe in English. Yeah.
English depiction, I do not know whether it has the strength of my mother language. But anyway, I'll try. Just a short paragraph.
Is this a story or is it from
Yes, it
the
is a story.
Okay.
It is story. The title of the story is Death of a Man. Significantly, the death of a man. The posture of the man lying on the road indicated that he might be alive, perhaps gasping, but not yet dead. Maybe he was a total stranger who had straggled to the city looking for a job to survive. Nobody probably knew who he was or where he came from. Stragglers like him did not carry identity cards in their pockets. If they happened to die, who was to be informed? And who would care to inform? It would be a corpse, a dead body, to be dragged away and dumped aside. No. The dying man should be tended. At least his lips should be sponged. Even if he cannot be saved, it is unfair to let a human being die without a swill. If the poor man is coherent enough to identify himself, his kinsfolk should be informed of his fate, or they will keep waiting forever and not know that he will never return home. Ages seem to have gone by from the moment he closed the crack-open window until his hand touched the door latch. His legs trembled with excitement. He must tend the man. It was not right to sit idle behind shuttered windows and latched doors when a human being lay dying in front of his eyes. Not much of an effort to take a glass of water along. Just cross the lane to reach the pavement, lean over the man and feel his breath. If a Beto Wilder happened to intrude, he could be made to understand that offering water to a dying man was nothing but a charitable act, that no mischief was meant. And after all, what could they do to him? The door chain clinched just when Janak either came to fetch something or saw him undoing it and caught him at it. He was smothered with angry bellows. Open the door. Firing has not yet died down. Someone is killed, they say. And you can think of nothing but opening the door. Want to go out, eh? Play where? Curfew is claimed everywhere. And the rumpus has shifted from here only to the end of the street where rioting is in full swing. Do you want to go out and get killed? Ultimately, he goes out, and what happens? The shops would be crowded. Medicines have to be fetched. Do go out and don't hang around for long. Delay will only make us fret more. And do not go beyond the square. He longed to ask them, what good would it be his going out now? It might have made a difference yesterday. He strode out of the open door and crossed the lane in moments. Yesterday too, he could have gone out this quick and a life might have been saved. But he stood still and saw that the spot bore no sign of someone lying there a few hours earlier, not even a blurred blood stain.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for giving us a glimpse of the kind of experience and language, that has gone into your writing. And thank you very much for this conversation.